New dramatic amateur video tonight from the horrific explosion on the government building in Oslo, Norway. It shows the aftermath, debris and victims scattered everywhere.
I filmed most of it from the start. I walked around and tried to find the pulse on several people. Some had a pulse, some didn't.
The man that police say is responsible for the explosion and the shootings at a youth camp went before a judge today.
Anders Breivik has confessed to the attacks but denies any criminal responsibility here. He's 32 years old. He says he wanted his first court appearance to be open to the public. He told the judge he wanted to be able to explain his reasons for the massacre. Breivik made it clear he wanted a stage for his anti-Muslim rants and wanted to call for a revolution in Europe. But the judge denied the request for that public hearing and ordered him to be held for 8 weeks, half of that in complete isolation. Now, after that, there will be a closed hearing which will address comments the suspect made about there being 2 other cells in his terror network. In the meantime, the number of dead has been reduced today to a total of 76. That is 68 people killed at that youth camp and 8 in the explosion outside of the government building. And we have learned one of the dead is the stepbrother of a Norway princess. Christopher Hinn is our terrorism expert, a former Homeland Security senior advisor. Christopher, a lot of people were shocked when they heard that the suspect here is a Norwegian man and had no connections to any extremist group. Were you shocked to hear that?
I'm not shocked. If I guess anyone is capable of such a horror attack on anyone. Now, where this individual, I guess, went under the radar. He's 32 years old, blonde, native of Norway, and on the other hand, no one detected him that he could be an extremist or radical.
Well, it's a lesson to people on both sides of this issue. Number one, you can't discriminate just based on looks because clearly there is homegrown terrorism. And number two, you just never know what you're going to get. Let's talk about that specifically, Christopher, because we've spoken to you several times about homegrown terrorism and what it is. Is this not a perfect example of how this can grow organically within one's own society?
Well, I think, Norway is a perfect example. It's a peaceful, they held in 1993 Oslo Accord with the Palestinians and Israel. But on the other hand, homegrown terrorism has been such a unique situation we're dealing with. Everybody focuses, of course, immediately on the extremism of Islam. This has nothing to do with religion, and I'm not supporting any groups here other than protecting our country. And what we need to look for the threat. That's what we sometimes miss. What are we looking for, and how do we go about identifying it and executing and taking care of that?
Well, how do you identify in something like this where a man can very easily blend in and clearly did for years? What kind of preparation could anyone have done to prevent this?
This is a tough one. I mean, you're dealing with a country, again, that is so peaceful. Now, in our federal buildings, we have security in the building, uniform, and outside. In Israel, for example, they have a lot of people with plain clothes. You would never know who they are.
Right.
And they're detecting something's wrong, and they don't look just for a certain profile. They're going to look for any individuals that is acting unusual, or again, someone who is just doing something that's not right.
Well, I think as is typical, a lot of people bring it back to their own home and they wonder, what have we learned in the United States from this? And Christopher, I have to ask you, do you think we in the U.S. are prepared to detect something that would be off or something a little strange in the area of our government buildings, of where our children are? Are our people trained well enough to prevent that?
Well, in 1995, we can think of the Oklahoma bombing, identical to what took place in Norway. But lesson learned here is that we need to educate, again, our law enforcement, our community, our citizens, what to look for and how to detect.
You mean from the bottom on up, not just the big wigs,
you want to use everybody who has eyes and use those to help you. And not only law enforcement, they only have so many, but education, extremism. We have a program called, extremism identification and terrorism prevention, but you got to prevent it somehow by working together with law enforcement and intelligence.
Well, as we've said, and as you said before, just to be vigilant and always keep an eye on what's going on around you. We're out of time, Christopher. We do appreciate you coming in. Thank you so much.
Thank you.